know the story. A beautiful woman, cursed for her beauty, turned into a monster with snakes for hair, doomed to turn anyone who looks at her to stone. It's one of the most famous images in Western mythology. It's on shields, tattoos, fashion labels, a courthouse statue in Manhattan. And for the first 400 years, the Greeks told this story. It doesn't exist. Let's start with a story most people actually know, because it's worth being precise about where it comes from. In this version, Medusa was once a stunningly beautiful young woman, a priestess serving in the temple of Athena. Poseidon, god of the sea, either seduces or assaults her inside that temple. Athena, furious that her sacred space has been violated, punishes the offense. But she doesn't punish Poseidon. She punishes Medusa. Her hair is turned into living snakes, and her gaze into a weapon. Anyone who looks directly at her turns to stone. This is a vivid story. It's the one that shows up in nearly every modern retelling, every Percy Jackson adaptation, every tattoo parlor flash sheet. It comes from one writer, the Roman poet Ovid, writing in his Metamorphoses, around 8 CE, which means the beautiful woman cursed for a god's crime version of Medusa is a Roman story, written roughly 700 years after Medusa first appears in Greek literature at all. So what did the Greeks actually say 7 centuries earlier? The earliest surviving account of Medusa comes from the Greek poet Hesiod, writing his Theogony around 700 BCE. In Hesiod, there's no curse. There's no beautiful priestess. There's no assault, no punishment, no transformation. Medusa is simply born monstrous, one of 3 sisters called the Gorgons, along with Stheno and Euryale, daughters of the primordial sea deities Phorcys and Ceto. Of the 3 sisters, only Medusa is described as mortal. The other 2 are immortal, and critically, in the earliest Greek art, Medusa isn't drawn as beautiful at all, cursed or otherwise. She's drawn as something closer to a mask, a broad, round, deliberately terrifying face called a gorgonion. You'll find this face on temple pediments, on the front of shields, on coins, on doorways, for centuries before Ovid ever picked up a pen. Here's the part almost nobody mentions. That face wasn't there to represent evil. It was apotropaic, a protective symbol, meant to ward danger away by confronting it with something more frightening than whatever threat was coming. Ancient Greeks put Medusa's face on their armor for the same reason some cultures paint eyes on the front of boats. Not because she's the villain of the story, because she's the guard at the door. The actual myth Hesiod and others tell is straightforward hero narrative mechanics. The hero Perseus is sent to bring back Medusa's head, uses a reflective shield to avoid her petrifying gaze, and beheads her while she sleeps. From her severed neck, 2 beings spring out fully formed, the winged horse Pegasus and a warrior named Chrysaor. Both are described as children of Medusa and Poseidon, conceived before her death. Notice what's missing from this version. Any suggestion that this was a punishment for anything. She's not cursed. She's just what she is, until Perseus needs a trophy. So somewhere, in the roughly 700 years between Hesiod and Ovid, the story shifts from monster born a monster to beautiful woman transformed by punishment. Why? Part of the answer is genre. Ovid wasn't writing religious literature or sacred history. The Metamorphoses is a 15-book epic explicitly about transformation, stitched together from dozens of older myths and reworked to fit his theme. A monster who was simply always a monster doesn't serve that story. A tragic figure who becomes a monster does. Part of the answer is also cultural. By the Roman period, Myths about gods punishing mortals, often unfairly, often for something a more powerful figure did to them, had become a familiar narrative pattern. You see similar structures in stories like Callisto or Arachne. Ovid was working inside an established Roman literary tradition of retelling Greek myths with added moral complexity, and frequently added cruelty from the gods. And this is really the bigger point of this whole video. Myths aren't fixed texts. They're not scripture, preserved word for word. They're stories that got retold, generation after generation, culture after culture. And every storyteller who retold them shaped them to fit their own moment, their own audience, their own themes. The Medusa most people know today isn't the Greek myth. It's a nearly 2,000-year-old Roman remix of a much older Greek symbol. And it's the version that happened to survive into Renaissance art, into Freud's essays, into modern pop culture, because it was simply the most dramatically satisfying version on record. Where it gets stranger still, in the last few decades, artists and writers have gone back to Ovid's version specifically, the one where Medusa is a victim, punished for someone else's crime, and reclaimed it. In 2020, a bronze statue by Argentine-Italian artist Luciano Garbati was installed across the street from a Manhattan courthouse handling sexual assault cases. Medusa, holding the severed head of Perseus, inverting the ancient ending. So in one sense, the story has come almost full circle. Thousands of years ago, Medusa's face was a symbol of protection people wore on their shields. Then a Roman poet turned her into a cautionary tale about a woman punished by a jealous goddess. And now, that very punishment story has been flipped again into a modern symbol of survival and justice. Same name, same snakes, at least 3 completely different meanings, thousands of years apart. So the next time you see that image, beautiful, cursed, screaming, remember, that's not the original myth. That's a Roman poet's remix, filtered through 2,000 years of retellings, each one bending her a little further from where she started. Which raises the obvious question: how many other ancient myths are we getting from the last person to rewrite them, not the first?